In ancient Rome, your father could legally kill you, sell you, or abandon you, and the state would not interfere. This was not corruption, it was law. To understand Roman power, you must start inside the family. In ancient Rome, the family was not a private refuge, it was a legal structure, enforced by law, custom, and violence. From the moment of birth, a Roman child entered a household governed by one figure alone, the paterfamilias. Under Roman law, this man held Patria Potestas, a power so absolute that it extended over life, death, property, and identity. A newborn was not automatically accepted. After birth, the infant was placed at the father's feet. If he lifted the child, it lived. If he turned away, the child could be exposed, abandoned, or killed without legal consequence. Marriage followed the same logic. Roman unions were rarely about affection. They were contracts designed to secure alliances, protect property, and produce legitimate heirs. Wives passed between households through legal arrangements that often transferred authority from father to husband, or in some cases left women suspended between the two. Emotional intimacy was not the goal. Stability was. Roman writers praised the family as the foundation of civilization. Statues, epitaphs, and moral texts celebrated discipline, obedience, and continuity. But behind this idealized image was a system built on hierarchy and control. Children worked early. Discipline was harsh. Enslaved people lived inside the household, owned by the same authority that ruled the family itself. Violence was not an aberration. It was permitted, regulated, and normalized. To modern eyes, the Roman family appears paradoxical, revered as sacred, yet governed by fear. But for Romans, this structure made sense. The household was Rome in miniature, ordered, unequal, and obedient. To understand Roman power, survival, and social stability, one must begin here, inside the home, where authority was learned before it was ever enforced by the state. Chapter 1: The Roman Family Myth versus Reality. Roman society celebrated the family as the moral backbone of civilization. In law codes, funeral inscriptions, and public monuments, the Roman household appeared disciplined, stable, and virtuous. Writers like Cicero and Livy praised ancestral customs, mos maiorum, as the reason Rome had risen to power. The family was presented as a school of citizenship, where obedience, duty, and honor were taught before a child ever encountered the state. But this idealized image obscures how Roman families actually functioned. Modern assumptions about family values, emotional closeness, parental protection, personal choice, do not translate cleanly into the Roman world. Affection existed, but it was not the organizing principle. Authority was. The Roman family was not primarily an emotional unit, it was a political, economic, and legal institution designed to preserve property, status, and lineage. At its center stood the paterfamilias, the senior male who legally embodied the household. Everyone beneath him, wives, children, adult sons, and enslaved people, was subject to his authority. This power did not weaken as children aged. A son could be a soldier, a magistrate, even a senator, yet remain legally subordinate to his father until the father's death. The household functioned less like a partnership and more like a chain of command. Roman art and literature rarely depicted domestic conflict, not because it was absent, but because order was the virtue being displayed. Obedience was praised. Silence was expected. Control was framed as responsibility. When Roman elites spoke of strong families, they meant families that obeyed, endured, and reproduced without disruption. This contrast between ideal and reality defines Roman family life. To understand what followed inside the Roman household, one must first discard the comforting myth and confront the structure beneath it. A system where power mattered more than intimacy, and stability mattered more than care. Chapter 2: Absolute Power of the Father, Patria Potestas. At the core of Roman family life stood Patria Potestas, the legal authority of the father. Unlike parental authority in most modern societies, this power was not symbolic or temporary. It was total, lifelong, and protected by law. From the early republic through the High Empire, Roman legal tradition granted the paterfamilias control over every member of his household, regardless of age or status. Under Patria Potestas, a father could arrange marriages, dissolve them, control property, and determine the legal fate of his children. Roman law permitted a father to punish his children physically, to sell them into slavery, and in earlier periods, even to execute them. The 12 Tables, Rome's earliest law code from the 5th century BCE, explicitly recognized these rights. Although executions within families became rare over time, the legal possibility remained, reinforcing the father's absolute authority. Historical sources record real examples. The historian Livy describes Roman fathers condemning sons for disobedience or dishonor, presenting such acts as grim demonstrations of virtue rather than cruelty. Even during the empire, emperors hesitated to interfere in domestic authority, understanding that undermining Patria Potestas threatened the social order itself. This power extended beyond children. Wives, under certain marriage forms, fell under their husband's authority, while enslaved people were considered property entirely. The household was governed by one will. Obedience was not negotiated, it was expected. The psychological consequences of this structure were profound. Roman children learned early that survival depended on submission. Affection, when it existed, flowed downward as a privilege, not a right. Authority shaped identity. By the time Romans encountered imperial power, in courts, armies, or cities, they had already learned its logic. At home, absolute, unquestioned, and enforced by law. Chapter 3: Childhood without protection. In ancient Rome, childhood was not treated as a protected or sentimental stage of life. High infant mortality shaped parental behavior and social expectations. Modern estimates suggest that as many as 1 in 3 Roman children died before reaching the age of 10. Survival, not emotional nurturing, defined early life. At birth, a child was not automatically recognized as part of the family. Acceptance depended on the decision of the paterfamilias. Newborns who were sickly, disabled, or unwanted could be exposed, left outside the household to die. Or, in some cases, to be taken by others and raised as enslaved labor. This practice was legal and socially acknowledged, though not universally practiced. A child became fully integrated into the household only after formal rituals, such as the dies lustricus, the naming ceremony that took place days after birth. Before that moment, legal identity remained uncertain. Even after recognition, children were valued primarily for their future utility. Sons were expected to continue the family line and manage property. Daughters represented potential alliances through marriage. Roman children worked early. In poorer households, they contributed labor from a young age. In elite families, boys were trained in rhetoric, discipline, and public conduct, while girls were prepared for domestic responsibility and marriage. Physical punishment was accepted as a tool of instruction. Roman writers rarely questioned it. There was no legal concept of childhood innocence. Children were not shielded from death, labor, or authority. They witnessed executions, funerals, and discipline as ordinary features of life. By adolescence, many were already married, apprenticed, or serving in military roles. Roman childhood produced adults accustomed to hierarchy and endurance. Protection was not the goal. Preparation was. The family did not exist to shelter the young, but to shape them into obedient participants in Rome's social order. Chapter 4: Marriage. As strategy, not romance. Marriage in ancient Rome was not primarily a personal choice. It was a strategic arrangement shaped by family interest, property, and political advantage. Emotional compatibility mattered far less than lineage, reputation, and alliances. Fathers, not brides or grooms, negotiated most marriages. Especially among the elite, Roman law recognized different forms of marriage, the most significant distinction being between cum manu and sine manu. In cum manu marriages, a woman passed from the authority of her father into the legal control of her husband. Her property became his. In sine manu marriages, increasingly common by the late Republic, a woman remained legally under her father's authority. Under her father's authority, even while living in her husband's household. This arrangement preserved family wealth and reflected shifting economic strategies, not expanding personal freedom. Girls were often married in their early to mid-teens. Men were usually older, sometimes significantly so. Consent, in the modern sense, was not required. A marriage was valid if the heads of household approved. Women were expected to produce legitimate heirs, manage the household, and maintain sexual fidelity. Men faced far fewer restrictions. Divorce was legally simple and socially accepted. Either party could initiate it. Though consequences fell unevenly, political marriages could dissolve as quickly as they formed, especially when alliances shifted. Roman sources record frequent remarriage, sometimes multiple times within a single lifetime. Marriage was not framed as lifelong companionship. It was a functional institution designed to secure continuity and stability. Roman moralists praised wives who were obedient and discreet, not emotionally expressive. Love, when present, was secondary to duty. Through marriage, Roman families extended power beyond the household. The union of two individuals served a larger system, one where personal desire was subordinate to social survival. Chapter 5. Women inside the Roman household. Roman women lived within a system that restricted their legal authority while relying heavily on their labor, discipline, and endurance. Their daily lives varied by class, but across society, women were defined primarily by their roles as daughters, wives, and mothers. Public power remained close to them, yet the household depended on their management. Legally, women were excluded from voting, holding office, or commanding authority over male citizens. Most remained under male guardianship for much of their lives, first under their fathers and later under husbands or legal tutors. Even so, within the domestic sphere, women exercised significant informal influence. Elite women supervised households, managed enslaved labor, oversaw finances, and maintained family networks. In practice, many Roman homes functioned because of female administrative control. Motherhood was central to a woman's social value, but it was also dangerous. Childbirth carried high risk, and repeated pregnancies were expected. Women who failed to produce heirs could face divorce or marginalization. Those who succeeded gained respect, though rarely independence. Inscriptions praised women not for ambition or intellect, but for chastity, obedience, and fertility. Reputation shaped a woman's survival. Honor culture placed enormous pressure on female behavior. Accusations of sexual misconduct could destroy social standing, regardless of truth. At the same time, Roman society tolerated male infidelity, especially with enslaved people. Despite legal limitations, Roman women were not passive. Letters, legal petitions, and historical accounts show women negotiating marriages, defending property, and influencing political outcomes. Indirectly, their power was constrained, but real. Inside the Roman household, women occupied a paradoxical position, essential to family continuity, yet denied formal authority. Their lives reveal how Roman society balanced dependence on women with systematic control over them. Chapter 6. Enslaved people as family property. Roman households were not composed solely of kin. Enslaved people were a permanent presence inside the family, woven into its daily functioning yet excluded from its protections. Under Roman law, enslaved individuals were property, not persons. They existed entirely under the authority of the paterfamilias, subject to sale, punishment, or death without legal recourse. Many enslaved people lived intimately within the home. They cooked meals, raised children, managed accounts, and served as personal attendants. This proximity created the illusion of familiarity, but not equality. Roman writers frequently described enslaved individuals as extensions of household equipment, valued for utility rather than humanity. Violence was legally sanctioned as a tool of discipline. Masters could beat, torture, or execute enslaved people, though social norms, not law, sometimes restrained excess. Sexual exploitation was embedded in this system. Enslaved women and men were legally available to their owners, and sexual access was considered a right of ownership. Children born to enslaved women inherited their mother's status, expanding the household's enslaved population through birth. Family bonds among enslaved people had no legal recognition, and could be broken at any time through sale or punishment. This blurred boundary between household and ownership reshaped Roman domestic morality. Children grew up witnessing domination as normal. Authority was reinforced daily through unequal relationships enacted inside the home. Even affectionate language toward favored enslaved individuals did not alter their legal vulnerability. The Roman family depended on slavery for comfort and stability. Yet by incorporating enslaved people into the household while denying them personhood, Roman domestic life normalized extreme inequality. The family became a site where power was practiced constantly, not abstractly, where domination was learned as routine, lawful, and necessary. Chapter 7. Love, Affection, and Emotional Distance. Despite the rigid structure of Roman family life, emotional bonds did exist. Evidence survives in private letters, funerary inscriptions, and memorials that record grief, affection, and attachment. Roman epitaphs sometimes mourn children who died young or praise spouses for loyalty and devotion. These sources show that Romans were not emotionally indifferent, but emotion was carefully controlled and publicly restrained. Roman culture valued emotional discipline as a sign of strength and virtue. Excessive displays of affection were often viewed with suspicion, associated with weakness or moral instability. Philosophical traditions, particularly Stoicism, reinforced this attitude by promoting self-control, endurance, and rational restraint. Within the household, authority demanded distance. A father who ruled through affection rather than control risked undermining his authority. Grief followed similar rules. Mourning rituals were formalized, regulated by custom and law. Public displays of grief, especially by women, were sometimes restricted by sumptuary laws, which aimed to limit excessive emotion at funerals. Romans acknowledged loss, but they expected it to be managed, not indulged. What Romans valued more than emotional closeness was continuity of name, property, and reputation. Family success was measured in heirs, alliances, and honor, not intimacy. Love, when present, was private and secondary. Legacy was permanent. This emotional distance was not accidental. It reinforced hierarchy and stability. Children learned respect before affection. Wives learned duty before companionship. The family functioned because personal feeling was subordinated to structure. Roman family life reveals a society where emotion existed, but power decided when, and whether, it could be expressed. Chapter 8. Death, Inheritance, and the End of Authority. Death marked the only moment when absolute authority within the Roman family truly ended. As long as the paterfamilias lived, his power remained intact. His death dissolved Patria Potestas and reshaped the household through inheritance and redistribution of authority. Roman death rituals took place inside the home. The deceased was washed, displayed, and mourned by family members before burial or cremation. Elite families preserved death masks and paraded ancestors during funerals, reinforcing lineage and continuity. These rituals emphasized not loss alone, but survival of the family name. Inheritance was strictly regulated by law and often contested. Wills determined the transfer of property, status, and responsibility. Sons who had lived under lifelong authority could suddenly gain independence, wealth, and legal identity overnight. Daughters received dowries or designated portions, while wives' claims depended on marriage form and legal status. Disputes over inheritance were common and could fracture families long after the father's death. Only at this point did adult children become legally autonomous. Until then, personal achievement did not equal independence. Roman law treated authority as indivisible and absolute, ending only with death. The Roman family model left a lasting legacy. Concepts of paternal authority, inheritance, guardianship, and household hierarchy shaped later European legal systems. While many of its extremes faded, its influence persisted in law, religion, and social structure. In Rome, family authority was not softened by age or affection. It endured until the final breath, and only then did power pass on, reshaping the household one last time. Closing reflection. What Roman family life reveals about power. The Roman family was not designed to nurture individuality. It was designed to produce obedience, continuity, and control. Inside the household, Romans learned the same lessons that governed their wider society. Authority was absolute, hierarchy was natural, and survival depended on submission. The home was Rome's smallest political unit, where power was exercised daily and without appeal. Brutality within the family was not seen as a failure of morality. It was understood as discipline. Law did not intervene to protect the vulnerable inside the household, because the household itself was the mechanism of order. By granting the paterfamilias near total authority, Roman society ensured that obedience was internalized long before citizens encountered courts, armies, or emperors. This system produced resilience, but at a cost. Emotional distance, normalized violence, and rigid hierarchy shaped how Romans understood relationships. Loyalty and value. Affection existed, but it was constrained by fear and obligation. Love was private, power was public. Roman family life forces an uncomfortable question. How much control can a society justify in the name of stability? Rome's answer was clear. Order mattered more than comfort, and authority mattered more than care. The legacy of this system still echoes today, in laws, traditions, and assumptions about family and power. Understanding how Rome ruled its households helps explain how it ruled an empire, and invites reflection on where authority begins and where it should end. Do you think Rome's family system created stability, but justified cruelty? Share your answer in the comments. History doesn't speak unless we question it.